With a potential hard fork looming, the Bitcoin marketplace is skittish, and now SegWit2x is being rushed in so the miners can get their 2 megabyte big block size up. So what does this SegWit2x mean for Bitcoin? How does this all affect Bitcoin security and blockchain centralization? And what do you need to know about our news sources? Let's discuss. Hey everybody, I'm Gary Palmer Jr., you're you, and together, welcome to Minting Coins, where we are talking about Bitcoin, blockchain technology, and the future of what's going on in terms of the current news and the present context. And I wanted to thank you for showing up, for being here and being a part of this show. There's a lot going on and there's a lot in the news. We are seeing a lot of red. We've seen a lot of red across the board. It's been a cryptocurrency bloodbath out there. And with that being said, at some point, you know, when there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt and people are selling their cryptocurrencies and are selling their Bitcoin, at some point, that's when a lot of the investors are going to buy back in and purchase back in at those lower prices, at least in terms of, you know, the coins and the cryptocurrencies that they believe are actually going to go back up after they get corrected to, you know, what the market thinks is a more reasonable price for where the technology is at this stage of the game. With that being said, you know, we're almost halfway through the month of July, and in less than 2 weeks we have the BIP 148 SegWit proposal that's going to be implemented, the user activated soft fork. And it's in itself creating a lot of confusion and fear, uncertainty and doubt. People just not sure what's going to happen. Are their Bitcoins going to be safe? Are they prepared for this massive event, which, you know, will probably end up being just a blip on the radar ultimately. But in terms of the epicenter and people being affected by the disturbances across the blockchain, it's a very, very real situation right now where a lot of people, if they don't know what's going on and if they're not prepared, they can lose a lot of Bitcoin by not having the information that they need. At the same time, with the BIP 148, but also separate from the BIP 148, we had the SegWit2x proposal. And this has created a lot of controversy. The people who are proposing this, the companies that are behind it, the policies that it proposes, and what that means ultimately for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin blockchain technology has it means everything, because it will totally dictate where Bitcoin goes and how it evolves and how it moves forward from this point, from that fork forward. Let that be a soft fork or a hard fork. We'll be talking about that, if not in this video, then a pending video that'll be coming probably immediately after this one. But in this video, we're going to take time to focus on SegWit2x, talk about what it is, what does it mean, who's interested in it, and what does that mean for the community. So without further ado, why don't we pop over to coinmarketcap.com, jump into the market and news, and let's discuss. So here we are visiting this website. So today is August, or not August, today's July 12th. And so in the cryptocurrency world, where everyone is really concerned about regulations around cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, today is the day of action for net neutrality. Today is a day where companies all over the world are recognizing that net neutrality is a big deal, and it'll create different levels of the internet and can create a situation where basic services and websites that you rely on, that you depend on, might not be accessible unless you pay additional fees or unless they pay additional fees. And this is why it's really, really important that we pay attention to net neutrality, what the FCC is doing in the United States, and that we contact the FCC and our government representatives to let them know that we do not want the net neutrality regulation because we believe in a fair and open internet where everyone has access to this technology. Just like cryptocurrency, the internet is open source and it's free and everyone can have it, and the internet is never going to go away. The internet is going to stay up, it's going to stay existing, but the FCC can make rules, the FCC can make laws, the FCC can make regulations, however those words get defined, where even if we don't agree with what those definitions of those words mean, ultimately if you're breaking the law and a nipple accidentally shows on the Super Bowl, or if for whatever reason you get fined for the information that you're showing, well, this regulation can slow down and it can hurt people using the technology. So I'll have some links in the description. Support net neutrality, and let's keep an eye on that in the internet space, as we're keeping an eye on regulation in the cryptocurrency space as well. So jumping over to the actual coinmarketcap.com and taking a look at the market. So we were talking about this bloodbath that we've had with over 810 currencies. Our market cap has been sticking around that $100 billion mark, but we are down about $15 billion, about $14 billion right now. In the past 24 hours, about $4 billion in trading, and our Bitcoin dominance has increased. I don't have a screenshot from last night, but there is one that on Twitter where everything was red all the way down the board by double digits, except for Bitcoin, which was down but by single digits. So as all coins lost money, essentially, the safest haven of the Bitcoin cryptocurrency currencies, maybe besides Tether or something tied to a particular trading point, which also has pros and cons, was Bitcoin and was the Bitcoin space. And there's just a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and as you can see, it was crashing across all the coins. But where are we landed? We have landed with $14 billion less dollars into space, but some of these coins have held up very, very well. Litecoin, for example, at $48 is still at a strong 2% of Bitcoin's value. The Litecoin is under that percentage. I'm sorry, the Ethereum Classic compared to the Ethereum, and so it's really, really interesting. Just again, compare your prices of your altcoins compared to the value that they had in Bitcoin, not the value that they had in USD. You take your profits in USD, in US dollars, or in pounds or won or whatever it is that you use. But in terms of measuring your success in a cryptocurrency, I recommend that you compare that to the price of that altcoin in Bitcoin. So with the Bitcoin, we have all this crazy upgrading and forking coming up in the near future. Today is the 12th of July, and we have all of this deployment for the BTC1 and the BIP91, all leading up for the SegWit2x activation, which is all looking to happen before we have the BIP148 activation. Zooming this in a little bit, and our BIP148 activation. And then moving into the rest of this activation into the later quarter of this year. So just a few months, and all of this is going to be either with us or behind us in one form or another. There will be, to some degree, some sort of resolution to understand how this is going to happen. If we're going to have one Bitcoin or two Bitcoins in the meantime, this is a crazy and volatile ride. So to help look at this and help understand this, I wanted to get information about SegWit2x from a SegWit2x friendly source. And so the folks at CoinDesk are essentially owned and operated by the same company that has ownership stake in Coinbase and some of these other companies. And these companies are in favor of SegWit2x, as we're going to be discussing and reading here. And so from the source, we're going to be reviewing what is SegWit2x Mean, and what is it going over, and what is it seeking to accomplish, and what does this mean for you and your Bitcoin and your security inside the Bitcoin blockchain network. So what we have is that we have two different main proposals for boosting the Bitcoin transaction capacity, because as we are all relatively familiar with, is that there's a latency to sending and receiving transactions with Bitcoin. Currently, Bitcoin can only send and receive so many transactions per minute based on the network capacity. And so we have different proposals here to help increase the capacity. One proposal that you may have heard is the BIP-148, but the subject here and the topic of this article is the proposal known as SegWit2x. So this SegWit2x proposal has been extremely contentious. It's really been filled with a lot of misinformation, and it's been marketed and pushed with PR very, very hard to force it into existence, instead of really getting a strong consensus backing, which is impossible because there's so many people who are against it. They're really rushing and pushing and forcing this SegWit2x proposal through with the timeline and with the way that they've given and presented this information. So at the heart of what's going on, we have arguments for and against. And first we're going to talk about the SegWit2x and what it's seeking to do and how it's seeking to upgrade Bitcoin in two different ways. And so the first way that it's seeking to upgrade Bitcoin is by enacting a long proposed code optimization known as segregated witness. This is SegWit, the SegWit soft fork upgrade that everyone's been talking about. SegWit promises to create faster transactions. It promises to create more privacy with each of the Bitcoins. So each individual Bitcoin isn't tied to someone else's transaction necessarily, to have that stigma of, oh, this Bitcoin was used to buy ice cream and this Bitcoin was used to buy movie tickets, and and it just creates uniformity between each of the Bitcoins, so that each one is seen as equal to each other. SegWit fixes all sorts of bugs and lots of little fixes, and creates the ability for these mass transactions, so we could have many more transactions happen per minute to allow Bitcoin to scale, so it moves beyond being more than just a digital gold, and it can really be used as a digital currency on a mass scale across the world. So all of this is SegWit, and this is good stuff that a lot of people like. Good code that's really been battle tested and reviewed meticulously by the Bitcoin core dev team, which those people are dedicated to reviewing every line of code. The second upgrade that the SegWit2x is seeking to accomplish is to set a timeline for increasing the network's block size capacity from a single megabyte, which is how it operates today, to a new 2 megablock block size. They want to increase the block size to allow more room for additional transactions, so we can have more transactions happen per block. So right now we could only fit so many transactions that happen in 10 minutes. The Bitcoin blocks are mined on average every 10 minutes, and since they're mined on average every 10 minutes and the max block size is just 1 megabyte, they can only fit so many transactions in each block that gets mined. And in order to determine whose transaction, whose payment message gets included in the most recent block, that's determined by the mining fees. So the miners are able to reorganize and restructure whose message goes first based on who pays the highest mining fee. And this creates a difficult situation that makes Bitcoin hard to scale, and makes it so people have to wait a long time for their transaction to get processed, and also makes it really expensive to get a transaction sent, broadcast, and mined within the Bitcoin protocol, within the Bitcoin network. So by increasing the block size to 2 megabytes, they're going to be able to have more transactions and pop more transactions in there. Well, the problem with having a larger block size is that it makes it more difficult for more people to run a full node. And they don't want more people to run a full node. They just want the miners and the biggest, largest companies to be able to run these full nodes. So for them, that's not a problem, because they'll be able to mine a 2 megablock or 5 megablock block size just fine, because they have so much power in processing capacity, where the smaller miners with less power, a smaller block size makes it so anybody can be part of mining those and keeping up on an equal playing field across the board. So still we have debates revolving around the facts about the current network design and the performance of the Bitcoin blockchain, which we were talking about. We're talking about how it's currently limited to the number of transactions it can process, which again is only 1 megabyte size of transactions total, roughly every 10 minutes. And when there's heavy usage, it's hard to break in there. The miners are taking these fees to get people in, and essentially increasing the block size makes the network nodes more costly, as the node operators must store the entire copy of the blockchain on the computer files. So by increasing the block size, it makes running a network node more costly, and by a network node being more costly, that makes it more difficult for you or any average user of Bitcoin. Even if you think about it, even your parents or your just anyone that's not maybe super technically savvy, it's possible for them to run the full Bitcoin code blockchain protocol and be actually running Bitcoin. But the problem is really the cost that it takes to get that operation up and get that operation running, and being able to compete with that technology, with the time, with the resources, compared to these larger and larger companies. And so again, if we increase the block sizes, then it just concentrates that power to the larger companies and the larger mining companies, who are able to put the time, the money, and the resources into the technology to run these larger scale operations, which I don't think is a benefit. I think it's a better benefit to have more people run more nodes, because what do we know? The more nodes we have, the more decentralization we have. And the more decentralization that we have, the more security that we have. So if we take that logic in reverse, if we have fewer nodes, we have fewer concentration, a smaller concentration of decentralization. And if we have smaller decentralization, that means we have less security. On top of that, not only do we have less security because we have fewer nodes that are capable of running the full Bitcoin code, we also concentrate the power of the people and the companies who are able to run the Bitcoin mining code, and we concentrate that power in a centralized source of large-scale companies and institutions that are profiting, simply by existing. And that sounds ultra similar to the situations that we have in much of the current financial system and financial construct. And so with that being said, those are main reasons why I believe that we need more decentralization, and we need more people running full nodes, not fewer people. We want to make it easier for people to run full nodes. We don't want to make it more difficult. We want all people and small companies that have a chance to participate. We don't want to make it so only these large companies have all the power. And so let's look into this a little bit more and see how we can connect these dots. So with the SegWit2x, it's not the first proposal for scaling, but it differs in a couple ways. And so it was not put forward, nor has it been endorsed by the Bitcoin core team, the people who have the best understanding of the code, the independent team who is pushing to keep Bitcoin decentralized, the team who's pushing to keep Bitcoin private, And so because their intentions are to keep Bitcoin more private and more decentralized, it seems as if the Bitcoin core team has values that are more in line with what I'm thinking. Because again, I don't want to concentrate this power into larger companies, because that's going to be not an ingredient for success. So the network, again, the Bitcoin core is the network's main open source development team, all open source, very cool. Also, the SegWit2x does not include any new ideas. It simply combines previously proposed ideas in a new way. So they're just trying to get their big block size in there, and they're not really interested in the advancements of the technology or the advancements of the community. Again, what they are including in this proposal, again, it's just existing ideas proposed in a new way, are A, the SegWit, which we're in favor of, and then B, the block size increase, which is what is going to give them their power. The SegWit takes away the power because it creates more decentralization and makes the mining fees less per transaction, so that more people can have more transactions across the world and pay a smaller and smaller cost, so we can increase the transactions per second across the world. But the big block size makes it so the miners will gain more power over time to decide who gets to play inside this network. So again, these are the two things that are involved in the SegWit2x. Again, SegWit, don't let that, that's good to confuse you, and the 2x is increasing that block size. So the SegWit2x is deployed in its testnet to all the working group members on July 14th, and then the period of adoption starts on July 21st with an August 1st deadline to keep it going. So who supports it and who opposes it? So people who support it include the most of the network's largest mining pools, right? The largest, biggest mining pools that are making the most money, who want to retain their power by increasing the block size. They support SegWit2x. Bitcoin startups like Coinbase, PayPal, and blockchain, they also support SegWit2x, because if only the large companies can mine Bitcoin, then these are the large companies that can mine Bitcoin, and this will remove power from the individuals. Because if an individual, like, let me give you one example from Coinbase, in addition to a million other examples. If it's too expensive for an individual to operate their own node, to operate a full node for Bitcoin, then it'll be more difficult for that individual to have direct access to the Bitcoin network. It'll make it more difficult for that individual to have direct access to their own private key, their own private wallet, and Coinbase wants people to stay inside the Coinbase network. Coinbase wants to be able to control the rules of operation, and so Coinbase has a vested interest to consolidate that power. And then this article also goes on to state that people that support the SegWit2x include the former lead maintainer of Bitcoin Core, Gavin Anderson, who has since left Bitcoin, since there was speculation of him working with the CIA, or just him just being more in support of centralization and governance of Bitcoin in a way that made people think that would make Bitcoin less secure. And so he's in favor of SegWit2x, and so that's interesting. People who are opposing, in green here, people who are opposing SegWit2x include many businesses. Even though it says a few businesses, I believe that there's many businesses that are opposing the SegWit2x. We have most node operators and Bitcoin users are opposing, and we have nearly all the Bitcoin Core developers who are also opposing this software. So what's at stake? What's at stake with the SegWit2x? And it's the same thing that's at stake with the BIP148. Either we're going to end up with a fork in the road and two different Bitcoins, or everything is going to be perfectly A-OK. So let's look at all this part in gray here. I put this all in gray. It seems to be a lot of propaganda. We're gonna we're gonna read this together and just see if this makes sense. So and a split is what many Bitcoin users are most concerned about, leading them to worry about the SegWit2x proposal in general. In light of these anxieties, one of two things could happen to users Bitcoin directly. With enough support, Bitcoin upgraded to SegWit2x will work normally, and users will not likely experience any disruptions. So the point of this is that this article is just written in an extremely pro SegWit2x way, just saying, hey, if we support SegWit2x, everything's going to be fine. So CoinDesk readers are reading, hey, with all your concerns about Bitcoin, you know, if just everyone does this SegWit2x, then you have nothing to worry about. Not really proposing what the BIP 148 is talking about, and not really going into the reasons why having a bigger block size has disadvantages for users. So they go on to say, number 2 here, without support, a Bitcoin split puts users at risk of losing their Bitcoin. Cryptocurrency experts propose not making Bitcoin transactions during times of uncertainty time period around August 1st. I absolutely 100% agree with that. There is a lot of risk of losing your Bitcoins. There is a lot of fear, confusion, doubt. There could be a split in the blockchain, and if and when that happens, you need to understand where your Bitcoin is. Make sure before that happens that you have control of your private keys, and probably not make any transactions in Bitcoin until this gets sorted out, and we understand, is there going to be one Bitcoin, is there going to be two Bitcoins, and then, you know, how do you take those keys, and then, because then you'll have double Bitcoin, one for each chain, and then you can make a decision if you want to just hold both or sell one into the other, and show your support that way. Another longer term issue is that all users will need to upgrade their software to support the 2 megabyte hard fork component of the SegWit2x, or Bitcoin could split into 2 competing assets with different users. So again, this is just what users should do if they're pro SegWit2x. And if you're pro BIP 148, then you'll run BIP 148. And if you're pro SegWit2x, then you'll run SegWit2x. And then votes will be made that way. I highly encourage everyone to run a Bitcoin full node. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. I'll share links in the resources below. I just want to point out here, disclosure, that this article at Coindesk.com and Coindesk is a subsidiary of the Digital Currency Group, which acted as an organizer actually for SegWit2x proposal, and also has an ownership stake in both Coinbase and BitPay. So there you have it. There we have a lot of information about this SegWit2x. Now we understand that the SegWit2x, it includes SegWit, but it also includes the 2 megabyte big block, increasing the block size, making it so just larger companies and larger mining operations can mine Bitcoin. It'll make it so that the bigger block size, the 2 megabyte block size, that makes it so independent full node operators will have to pay more and just go through more difficulty to be part of the blockchain technology, to be able to run the source code. And personally, I think that would be a disservice to what we have going on. And I want to know, what do you think about this, and what is your philosophy? Do you think we should have more people running Bitcoin? Do you think we should have more people running a Bitcoin full node? Or do you think that this should be, running a full node should be limited just to the largest Bitcoining financial institutions in the world? Are you supporting of the decentralization and everyone running a full node? Do you run a full node? Would you run a full node if you knew exactly what to do? I'd like to know. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tap that like button. Show your support in any way that you can. I really appreciate you watching. I really hope that you found this information helpful into sort of dissecting this a little bit further. And with the show notes below, there'll be links in the description for you to then do your own research, get your own information. And until then, we'll be doing research as well, bringing you this very, very important news with these important developments as they continue to evolve in the Bitcoin and blockchain technology space. So with that being said, thanks again for showing up. We'll talk again soon, and I'm glad together we're minting coins.